My name is Cardi. I wish I could forget that night. I wish I just closed my eyes, rolled over and never looked back. But I didn't. I watched. I saw him. My stepdad, Josh. In that moment I stopped seeing him as Rena's husband. I stopped seeing him as the man who raised me since I was 11. I saw something else. Something raw, forbidden, and unforgettable. It was very huge and about 21 inch. Gosh, how can he be sexy and romantic at the same time? I asked myself. I knew what I saw was wrong. I knew the thoughts that followed were even worse. But once you open a door like that, it's almost impossible to close it again. Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, do well to subscribe and hit on notifications. To all my returning subscribers, thank you for always watching my videos. They say some moments stay with you forever. Not because you want them to, but because they choose to haunt you. That night was one of them. It was past midnight, maybe closer to 1 a.m. The house was quiet, except for the occasional creak of wood and the soft hum of the ceiling fan. I'd woken up thirsty. The summer heat made everything feel sticky and dry. I tossed off my blanket, slipped my bare feet into slippers, and padded down the hallway toward the kitchen. As I passed the guest bathroom near the stairs, something made me pause. The door was open just an inch, light spilling out in a thin sliver across the floor. I wasn't planning to stop. I really wasn't. But I heard the water running. Then silence. And then movement. I turned my head just for a second. Just to peek. Inside I saw Josh. He was standing there. Naked, back turned, drying his hair with a towel. Muscles carved across his shoulders, back firm and strong. I froze. My heart kicked in my chest hard and loud. I should have looked away, but I didn't. My eyes stayed on him, drinking in every detail. Then he turned slightly, just enough for me to see more than I ever should have. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked, stepping back into the shadow, praying he wouldn't see me. But he didn't. He kept moving, humming faintly as he picked up his shirt from the floor. Completely unaware. I hurried away, trying to make my footsteps light, pretending nothing happened. But inside everything had changed. In the kitchen, I filled a glass of water with trembling hands. My mind kept flashing back to what I saw. It wasn't the first time I'd seen a man naked, of course. But this was different. This was Josh, my stepdad. The man married to my mother. The man who raised me since I was 11. The man I trusted until now. I stood there, holding the cold glass to my lips. But my throat was too tight to swallow. Guilt was already seeping into my bones. I told myself it was just an accident. A glimpse. A stupid moment. But deep down, I knew it had done something to me. Sparked something. A door had opened in my mind. One I never even knew existed. When I went back to my room, I lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. I tried to think of anything else. Music. College. Work. My mom. But all I could see was Josh's body, the way he moved, the quiet confidence in his stance. It was wrong. So wrong. And yet, I wasn't repulsed. I wasn't disturbed. I was curious. The next morning felt different. The air in the kitchen was heavier somehow. I came downstairs in my usual oversized t-shirt and shorts. Josh was already there, sipping coffee, flipping through the news on his phone. He looked up when I walked in, offered me that familiar half-smile. "Morning, Carts," he said, using the nickname he'd given me when I was a kid. "Morning," I replied, my voice almost a whisper. He didn't seem to know. Didn't act any different. Maybe he really hadn't seen me last night. Maybe it was all in my head. I poured myself some coffee and sat across from him. For a moment I watched his hands, strong, rough, slightly tanned. I thought about how they'd held the towel. How they might feel if they touched skin. I shook the thought away and scolded myself. Josh was kind, dependable, and never crossed a line. He treated me like his own daughter, even when I was bratty or cold or distant. My real dad had left when I was 9. Josh had shown up 2 years later, and despite my resistance he stayed. Married mom. Took care of us. There was no reason to think anything more of what happened. No reason to read into a moment that was never meant to be seen. Still all day, my thoughts kept circling back to that sliver of time. That glimpse I couldn't unsee. I went about my day as usual. Ran errands with Mom, cleaned my room, answered a few emails from job recruiters. But my mind was elsewhere. That night kept replaying like a broken record. The tension in my chest grew tighter. Later that evening, Josh grilled steaks in the backyard while Mom mixed a salad. We sat at the table, laughing about a bad movie we watched last week. On the surface, everything was normal. But I wasn't. At one point, Josh reached across the table to pass me the salt. His fingers brushed mine lightly. Just a graze. But I felt it like a spark. I looked up and for a split second his eyes met mine. Not the usual fatherly glance. Something else. A pause. Flicker. Then it was gone. He cleared his throat, looked away. "Hope the steak's not too dry," he said. "It's perfect," I murmured. Later that night, I stood in front of my mirror in the dim light of my room. I stared at myself. At the girl in the reflection. At the curves, the flushed cheeks, the eyes filled with confusion. Who was I becoming? Was this just a phase? A wicked thought I'd forget in time? Or was it something more dangerous? I lay in bed, the house once again quiet and still. But unlike the night before, I didn't sleep easily. I kept listening. For footsteps. For a door. For the soft creak of the hallway floor. I hated myself for it. But I also couldn't stop. Something had changed. I felt it in the way I walked, in the way I breathed when I passed by Josh. I told myself it was just my guilt playing tricks on me, that I was imagining everything. But deep inside I knew better. The days that followed weren't anything dramatic.
No scandal. No confrontation.
Just subtle shifts. Barely noticeable to anyone else. But to me, they were seismic. Josh and I started talking more. About random things, books, shows, life. He asked about my college friends, my job interviews, my plans. He'd always been polite and interested before, but this felt different. More attentive. More present. One afternoon, I was lounging on the couch flipping through a magazine when he walked in from mowing the lawn. Sweat clung to his shirt, outlining the muscles of his chest. He tossed his baseball cap onto the table and grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. "You okay?" he asked, looking at me over his shoulder. "Yeah, just bored," I said, trying to sound casual. He smiled. "Boredom's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it helps you figure out what really excites you." I laughed softly, flipping a page. "You sound like a fortune cookie." He grinned, leaning against the counter, sipping his water. "Maybe. Or maybe I just know what I'm talking about." His eyes lingered on me just a little too long. It could have been innocent. Probably was. But I felt it again. That warm flush creeping into my skin. I crossed my legs and looked away. That night, at dinner, Mom talked nonstop about a new client she'd landed at the firm. Josh smiled and nodded, offering supportive words. But I noticed how tired she looked. How little she looked at him. How fast she finished eating, before heading to the bedroom with her laptop. Josh and I were left clearing the table in silence. Our hands bumped as we reached for the same plate. We both paused. He looked at me. "You okay, Karts?" he asked, voice low. "Yeah," I said too quickly. He didn't press. He just nodded and carried the dishes to the sink. But something in that quiet exchange made my heart beat harder. Later in my room, I sat at my vanity brushing my hair. I couldn't stop thinking about how he looked in the kitchen. The strength in his arms. The softness in his eyes. How easily he made me feel seen. I hated myself for the thoughts that followed. But they kept coming. The next evening, Mom had dinner with her boss. She was excited, said it was a big opportunity. And she'd be home late. Josh offered to cook. I helped him in the kitchen, chopping vegetables while he seasoned the chicken. We moved around each other easily. Comfortably. "You're good at this," he said, watching me slice bell peppers. Thanks. I learned from YouTube, I teased. He laughed, a deep sound that made my chest feel tight. Well, YouTube taught you well. We sat across from each other at the dining table. Just the two of us. He poured a glass of wine for me without asking. It felt grown-up, intimate. We talked about books. He'd always loved mystery novels, while I preferred romance. He teased me for it, then admitted he liked romance too, though he'd never tell his friends. You'd be surprised how many guys like stories that mess with your heart, he said, swirling his wine. Why? I asked, curious. Because sometimes you want to feel something you can't explain, even if it hurts. His words hung in the air for a moment too long. I swallowed hard, staring into my glass. We cleaned up slowly, side by side. When I reached for a towel to dry the dishes, he was already there, close, too close. I could feel the heat of him behind me. His arm brushed mine. Just barely. You okay? He asked again. I nodded, but I didn't move. He looked at me, something unreadable in his eyes. Then he stepped back and turned away. That night, I stood in front of my closet longer than usual. I picked out a tank top that clung to my chest and a pair of soft shorts. I wasn't sure who I was dressing for. Maybe I just wanted to feel noticed. I sat on my bed, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. I heard Josh's footsteps down the hall. He paused outside my door for just a second, then kept walking to his room. I stared at the door. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew I didn't want the night to end. The next few days were filled with stolen glances and awkward pauses. Josh and I both avoided being alone too long. When we were, the tension hung thick between us. One afternoon, I caught him watching me from the patio while I sunbathed in the backyard. I was lying on my stomach, in a bikini that didn't hide much. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch him quickly looking away. My heart raced. Why did it feel so thrilling to be seen like that? Why did it matter that it was him? Later, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. That I was reading too much into every look and touch. But that night I couldn't sleep again. I thought about the wine, the compliments, the way his fingers lingered on mine when he passed me a plate. I closed my eyes, trying to shake the images from my head, but all I could see was him. And all I could feel was the stir deep in my belly, one that wasn't going away anytime soon. There's a fine line between curiosity and desire. I used to believe that line was thick and clear, easy to spot, easy to stay behind. But not anymore. Days blurred into nights, and I kept catching myself doing things I wasn't proud of. Lingering too long in the hallway when Josh walked past shirtless from his workouts. Wearing thinner shirts around the house. Smiling at him differently. Watching him when he wasn't watching me. At least I thought he wasn't. One Thursday evening, Mom was called away on a weekend retreat with her legal team. She left in a rush. Kissing Josh on the cheek, hugging me tight, and promising to call every night. Her voice was tired, and her hug felt more like routine than love. The house was quiet again. Just me and Josh. That first night, we ordered takeout and watched a movie in the living room. I curled into the corner of the couch while he sat on the other end. At first, the space between us was wide. But little by little, I shifted closer. So did he. By the time the second movie started, our arms were touching. Just barely. But enough. You cold? He asked softly. A little, I said, though I wasn't. He reached for the throw blanket and draped it over both of us. His hand brushed my thigh, light, quick, probably accidental. But the fire it lit in my chest was anything but accidental. We sat like that for almost an hour. Neither of us moved. I could feel his warmth against my side, smell the faint scent of his aftershave. I tried to focus on the screen, but my mind was racing. What are you doing, Cardi? This is your mother's husband. But he didn't pull away either. Eventually I shifted slightly. My shoulder brushed his chest, and my hand rested on the couch cushion between us. I didn't realize it was so close to his leg until his hand moved, slowly, carefully, just enough that our fingers touched. Just a soft touch. Nothing bold. But it lingered. I didn't pull away. The silence between us grew heavier. The movie kept playing, but neither of us were watching it. I could hear his breathing, steady but deeper than before. And then his fingers moved. Lightly. Just enough to graze mine. A chill ran down my spine. I looked up at him. He was already looking at me. That same unreadable expression. Neither of us said anything. The moment passed when he finally stood up and muttered, "I should get some sleep." I nodded, heart pounding, mouth dry. "Yeah, me too." We didn't say good night. We just parted. But that night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the way his fingers touched mine. I could still feel it like a burn on my skin. The next morning was awkward. He didn't mention anything. Neither did I. We both danced around the memory, pretending nothing had happened. But it had. It only got worse or better depending on how you looked at it that evening. We were both in the kitchen making sandwiches. He reached for the bread at the same time I did. Our hands collided. He laughed lightly, but his eyes, they locked onto mine. And something inside me snapped. I didn't move my hand away. Not this time. He didn't either. We just stood there for a second. Silent. Breathing. Then his thumb brushed over the back of my hand. Slow, deliberate, electric. I looked up at him again. My stomach was in knots. "Cardi," he said, barely a whisper. I swallowed hard. "Yeah." His hand withdrew slowly. He stepped back. "This isn't right." "I know," I said, voice shaking. We both stood there like statues, unsure what to do next. "I care about you," he said, eyes still on mine. "You know that." "I know," I whispered. "I've watched you grow up. You're smart, strong, beautiful." The way he said beautiful made my heart feel like it would crack. "You've always been kind to me," I said, "even when I didn't deserve it." He exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I shouldn't say this, but lately it's been hard not to notice how much you've grown." A tear slipped down my cheek. I didn't know why I was crying. Was it shame? Guilt? Longing? Maybe all three. "I don't want to hurt anyone," I said. "I don't either," he replied. And yet, we were both already hurting someone, weren't we? We didn't speak for the rest of the night. I ate my sandwich alone in my room. The air felt heavier now. The line we thought we could tiptoe around had been touched, crossed even if just slightly. I lay in bed that night, clutching a pillow to my chest. I hated the way I felt. I hated how much I wanted him to come knock on my door. Just stand there. Say something. Do something. But he didn't. He stayed in his room. And I stayed in mine, my thoughts louder than ever. This wasn't just a glimpse anymore. It was something else entirely. It was the final night Mom was away. Rain tapped against the windows like a soft warning. The house felt unusually still. The kind of stillness that doesn't come with peace but with pressure. Like something was waiting to happen. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the door. I'd left it open on purpose. I told myself it was for air. I told myself it was nothing. But deep down I knew better. I was tired of pretending. Tired of second-guessing every look, every brush of skin. I knew what I felt. I knew what he felt. And I knew where we were heading if we didn't stop. But I didn't want to stop. I pulled my blanket over my lap and leaned back against the pillows. My lamp was still on. I hadn't even tried to sleep. My heart was racing. My hands were cold. And then I heard it. Footsteps. They were slow. Careful. Coming from the hallway. I held my breath. Then his shadow appeared in the doorway. He paused like he was deciding something. His hand reached up and rested on the doorframe. He looked in. Josh. Our eyes met. He didn't speak. Neither did I. The air between us was thick with everything we hadn't said. I swallowed hard, barely able to breathe. My body tensed. Part of me screamed to say something. To tell him to go back to his room. To remind him this was wrong. But I didn't. Instead, I said quietly, "You can come in if you want to." It was the softest invitation. Just 7 words. But they carried everything. He stepped in. The door stayed open behind him. He walked slowly, cautiously, like he was giving me every chance to change my mind. But I didn't. I just watched as he came closer, stopped at the foot of my bed, and stood there. "I shouldn't be here," he said. "I know. This isn't fair to your mom. I know. We'll never come back from this." I looked down at the blanket in my lap. My voice was quiet. "I don't think we ever really left." He sat on the edge of the bed beside me, not touching me. Not yet. Just close enough that I could feel the pull between us. "You don't understand, Cardi," he said. "You're young. You've got your whole life ahead of you. This could ruin everything." I finally looked at him, eyes burning. "Then why are you here?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. We both knew why. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His hand lingered at the side of my face. His thumb brushed gently over my cheek. "I've never felt this torn," he whispered. "Neither have I." Then he kissed me. It was soft at first, careful, hesitant. But the moment our lips met, something broke open inside me. A flood of everything I'd buried. Weeks of tension. Nights of sleepless wondering. Guilt, longing, curiosity. It all poured out in that kiss. And he kissed me like he'd been starving. Like he hadn't touched another soul in months. His hands were warm and trembling. Mine were gripping his shirt like I couldn't let go. My mind was spinning. This was happening. It was really happening. I don't remember how we ended up lying back on the bed. I don't remember the exact moment my shirt came off, or when his lips found my skin. It all blurred into sensation. But what I do remember, clearer than anything, was the sound of rain. It kept falling outside like it was washing everything away. Like it was giving us this moment, this sin, this silence. When it was over, we just lay there. Breathing. Quiet. His hand rested on my stomach. My head on his chest. Neither of us moved. Then his voice broke the silence. "I'm sorry," he whispered. My throat tightened. "I'm not." He looked at me then. Pain in his eyes. "This isn't love, Cardi." I nodded. "I know. But it felt like it for a moment." "It did," I said. "But it's not." The reality came crashing down on us both. It wasn't just what we'd done. It was what we'd broken. There was no fixing it. Not really. The door was still open behind us. And I knew sooner or later Mom would walk through it. She did. The next morning, I saw her face when she walked into the kitchen. She smiled at me, kissed Josh's cheek, thanked him for taking care of things. I couldn't breathe. I excused myself and locked myself in my room. I stared at the mirror for a long time. I didn't recognize the girl looking back. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Just silence. I never told her, and he never touched me again. But every time I walk past that room, every time I hear rain, I remember. I remember that night, the door left open, and the man who walked through it. Have you ever imagined yourself in this kind of situation? What did you do about it? Subscribe to this channel and hit on notifications for more interesting stories like this.